There's this idea that this force is being built with lots and lots of people. There's a major recruitment effort. It seems mighty ideological. The requirements to be an ICE agent are basically nothing at this point. It feels like he's building a police force of his own.
100%. And this is what should really concern people, because ICE is kind of between what you think of as your local law enforcement and the U.S. military. Yes. They are a militarized force. I mean, we've seen them show up in force. They're totally unaccountable. They're wearing masks. They don't coordinate. I mean, I'm from Los Angeles. They don't coordinate with local and state law enforcement before they go on these raids. And now they're going to be more funded than the vast majority of militaries around the world. You talk about authoritarianism. This is just something that you only see in kind of extreme securitized authoritarian states, where you essentially have a militarized force operating domestically, that is only accountable to itself and to Donald Trump. From everything we hear about this, it kind of reports up through Stephen Miller to Donald Trump personally. And so we're talking about tens of thousands of heavily armed people going out into American communities, deporting people. What people should watch here is mission creep. Does ICE start to I mean, the thing that is so scary about the Washington piece is that has nothing to do with immigrations and customs enforcement, if ICE is going to be a part of that. And I'm sorry to have a pretty haunting analogy, but this is kind of like, the SA, right? Like that we saw in Germany. The idea that you essentially have a militia that is answerable only to and accountable only to the leader, in this case, Donald Trump. And so this is something that we all have to see as kind of, I think, the most dangerous manifestation, because this is new in America. We're not used to having a military.
I got Tej Gill. I've got Trevor Comstock. Got some things I want to put to them. One about Make America Healthy Again with Trevor, and Tej, I want his opinion on the particular situation with police forces throughout the country. John Lott joins us. He's, I think, the top guy on looking at stats on crime and really cutting to the truth of what's happening with gun rights and all that. He's also written a brilliant piece on tariffs, and President Trump out today, as you know, all day long, because really the tariffs kicked in the last couple of days. He's very proud of what he's done in redoing the commercial relationships of the world. But Lott, I got you on here for a couple of things. Number one, this situation in D.C. where President Trump is obviously looking at the criminal statistics of District of Columbia, the imperial capital, and saying this thing's out of control, and I may have to federalize the police force. I may have to send in, I don't know, National Guard or whatever. You've got this situation right there where they accuse President Trump with the ICE agents and the federalization of some National Guard and this, of creating the SA is really the brown shirts in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And then last but not least, the shooting that happened in Fort Stewart the other day. You've been an expert at saying, hey, these gun-free zones work to the exact opposite. Let's take it from the top first. Since you're the guy everybody always turns to for the hard data about crime, what is going on in the District of Columbia, the imperial capital, and President Trump now? It's beyond threatening. I think it's actually in motion that he's saying we just can't allow these streets to be out of control. And obviously the D.C. Metro Police and really the mayor has no intention of really having law enforcement, sir.
Right. Well, reported crime to police has gone down in the last few years in D.C., but it's still above where it was prior to COVID. One of the problems that you have in D.C. is they have fewer police now than they had before COVID. It went up slightly last year, but it's still below what it was before, despite the increase that they've had in the population. But one of the big problems that they have is that they really just don't punish juveniles. You have, and the city is responsible for going and prosecuting juveniles. The federal government basically handles crimes by adults. And unless they're going to get serious about cracking down on crime against juveniles, you're going to have situations like you had the other night where Doge's Big Balls was harmed. I guess there were like 10 juveniles that had attacked him. Look, this isn't rocket science. If you want to reduce crime, you have to make it risky for criminals to commit crime. And you can do that in many ways. You can go and have higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences, the death penalty. But you can also make it riskier by allowing victims to be able to go and defend themselves. And D.C. makes it very difficult for people to be able to go and defend themselves. They allow concealed carry permits, but it's very restricted. Visitors to D.C. essentially find it impossible to be able to go and carry there. They don't recognize permits from other places. There's in the next reconciliation budget that they have, there is a provision in there that would require D.C. to recognize concealed carry permits from other parts of the country. That would be useful. But Trump is right. To be able to go and put more federal agents on the street is just one way of making it costly for criminals to go and commit crime.
Is it more in the Judge Janine? Is it more about actual enforcement and enforcing on these juveniles and charging them as adults? Because, people are saying it's scary in certain parts of town with these packs of young kids. Or do you think would you caution President Trump about federalizing and putting federal law enforcement officers in there? I mean, what would be your recommendation to the president?
Well, Judge Janine has restrictions on what you can do. I believe they have to go and change the rules for D.C. so that somebody who is 14 would be classified as an adult. And at that point, she could go and prosecute them. Look, there's a big difference between what she's doing and what the U.S. attorney under Biden did. The U.S. attorney under Biden dropped over half of the arrests and didn't prosecute them for violent crimes that were there. He was willing to go after J6ers and others, but when it came to actual violent criminals, he wasn't willing to prosecute them. So look, that's helpful, at least in terms of how they're treating adults. But D.C. is going to have to make some changes there to make it so that the U.S. attorney can go and prosecute people who are 15 years of age or whatever who are engaged in these types of pacts. Look, as far as federal officers go, to me, it doesn't really matter whether it's a federal officer or whether it's a metropolitan police officer. You're talking about the capital city for the United States in part, though, this applies in general. I mean, look at Los Angeles, where they went and used National Guard troops to go and try to protect ICE agents and reduce violence. I mean, that seemed to work there. So I don't think it matters for the criminal exactly who's doing it. If you're just making it more likely that they're going to be arrested, more likely that they're going to be prosecuted and convicted, you're going to reduce the amount of crime. For some reason, the sound cut out.
No, I'm sorry. I had my block on. People are. This gets to our second point about the mass deportations. They're saying now the progressives are going crazy, saying President Trump's really building a group of brown shirts that in bringing these troops in and giving them authority away from local police, he's essentially building a force that he can turn on anybody. Walk us through your understanding what President Trump's trying to accomplish here, particularly in these out-of-control sanctuary cities.
Well, I mean, he's focused overwhelmingly on criminals, people who, particularly violent criminals that are there. One of the puzzles that you often have is why these Democrat sanctuary areas fight so hard against deporting criminals. I mean, murderers, people who are child rapists. And, I think partly what's going on is just the census counts illegals as the same as U.S. citizens when it's coming to things like figuring out the population in an area, which is used for things like congressional districts. You look at California. The most conservative estimate that I've seen with regard to the number of illegals in California is like 3 million. Obviously, I think it's much higher than that. But you may be talking about 5 congressional districts or more as a result of that. You look at New York and Illinois and New Jersey and Maryland and Massachusetts and these other places. You may be talking about 25 congressional districts, the equivalent of that. I can understand why they want to be magnets for attracting illegal aliens to their areas. And otherwise it's pretty much a puzzle why they go and fight so hard against even deporting people who are child rapists. And so, I think, it's really, I'm glad Trump is talking about trying to redo the census. Obviously, it's not going to affect the redistricting right now. You have to wait until they do the next census properly. But at least it would give people an idea of how messed up the system is right now. I have to say one other thing, though. Trump has to be careful in terms of who he appoints to run these types of things. One of the mistakes that he made for the 2020 census is that he didn't use people who actually were good at statistics that were there. And the census itself has acknowledged that there were systematic errors that overcounted population in Democratic-controlled states and undercounted them in Republican states. May have been a difference of like 13 congressional districts that should have gone from Democratic states to Republican states. Maybe you're talking about 10 more Republicans, at least, that should have been in Congress. Could you imagine how different the discussions we've been having this year would be if rather maybe than 3 Republican vote margin in the House, we had 13? It would be very different. And so this makes a big difference. And so hopefully this will be something that's dealt with in the future.
Before I lose you, I got to talk about this amazing piece you just wrote. President Trump today putting out tariffs. It's his 200th day. And one of the things he's proudest of is how he's redone the commercial relationships in the world and particularly with the use of tariffs. You've got a great piece up. Walk me through it.
Yeah. So just so people know, I have a PhD in economics. I've had research and teaching positions at Stanford, University of Chicago, the Wharton Business School, Yale, UCLA, and I've written on trade type issues. So this is something that's in my wheelhouse. And look, you have all sorts of economists and others who go and say tariffs distort trade. They reduce the amount of trade. They hurt consumers. They go and reduce investment and growth. Look, all those things are true. But the thing is, they're also true for all the other taxes that you have there. Sales taxes distort. Income taxes distort issues about things like how much labor people are willing to sell, how much they're willing to work. Corporate income taxes reduce growth. So do regular income taxes on personal people. And so, the question isn't whether, all taxes do this. So to go and use the arguments against tariffs doesn't make much sense unless you also compare it to others. The issue that economists should be looking at is how do we reduce the overall disincentives created across all the different taxes? Before Trump became president, the average tariff rate was 2.5%. Compare that to income taxes, where you just look at state and federal. The top rate on average across states is like 44%. For corporate income taxes, the top rate would be about 27%. Those are really high rates. And the things that people have to understand is that the size of the distortion increases more quickly with the level of taxes. So if I have a 20% tax, I have more than twice the distortion that I have if I have a 10% tax. Now, I don't know what the correct optimal tariff is, but I am willing to bet you a large amount of money. It's a lot higher than 2.5%. And so, somehow, I don't like taxes at all in general, okay? But you got to have some taxes. We spend money on things. And so the question is, what's the right mix of taxes that we have there? And I think Trump is much closer to getting it right than people who just say we shouldn't have any tariffs at all.
John Lott, amazing. I'm going to get Brad to wrestle with that after you punch. Amazing on your statistics. You're the number one guy in the country with all your knowledge of crime in this country and the mathematics of it. Where do people go to get you, to go to your institution to find out more, sir?
Well, they can find us at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. And just a shout out to Brad. I know him a little bit, so I hope he's doing well too.
He's doing well. He's riding shotgun. John Lott, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you very much.
If you want to find out about crime and the reality of it, go to see John. John Lott's the best mathematician in this regard.